Welcome to the Bleep Midlife Bulimia podcast with guest Keith Blakemore-Noble, the UK's #1 fear strategist coach.
Hello, everyone. I am Lorianne. I'm the host of Bleep Midlife Bulimia. And I'm very pleased today to have Keith Blakemore-Noble. He's an award-winning international speaker, multi-time best-selling author, and the UK's #1 fear strategist coach. Thank you so much for being here today, Keith.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and how you became a fear strategist coach.
Good question. Why? As good a place to start as any. So yeah, I'm Keith. I live in the UK. Born and brought up in a very small place in the northeast of Scotland, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. So I grew up with just me, my mum, my dad, and the radio for company for the first few years. My sister came along when I was 3. Then when I was 5, we moved to a small village. That's where I started to go to school. What this meant was for the first 4 or 5 years, I didn't get much in the way of social development, interacting with other people. It was my family and the radio. Got great at interacting with the radio, but not so good at interacting with people. All which meant I was really, really shy, painfully shy. I now, looking back on it, I now realize it was social phobia that I developed because I just didn't know how to interact with people. And this carried on through primary school, high school, university life, into working life. I did really well in the subjects that I enjoyed, and I ended up working in IT, which was almost the perfect career for someone who hates interacting with people, because you just do all behind the screen of a computer. Brilliant. As you can imagine, life fairly lonely. It's hard to make friends when you can't see yourself hanging out with strangers, basically. And it all came to a head one Christmas when I was in a member of an online community. This was kind of just before things like Facebook and so on really took off. We're in an online community, and somebody said, why don't we all get together for a Christmas party? Because we all lived within reasonable access of London, and it was Christmas, and we all knew each other from the computer. And I thought, how hard can it be? And I found out exactly how hard it was. It's one thing interacting with people from the keyboard and behind the screen. It's quite another when you meet them in real life. It was walking into a room full of strangers. My biggest fear. I ended up having a panic attack, fled. And at that point, I decided, you know what? You can't go through life like this. What is your life going to look like if you don't do something about this? What's life going to be like in 10 years if you're still like this? It's going to be very lonely. It's not going to be nice. And that was the point at which I decided I had to do something. Me being me, I dived into learning NLP and hypnosis, purely thinking I can use it to sort myself out. Found I was good at it. Got rid of all of those things, plus a couple of other phobias that I had, which I kind of hadn't even featured in life until that point. Got rid of those as well. Found I was good at it, enjoyed it. Friends were saying, oh, can you use that to help me with X, Y, and Z? Yeah, of course, no problem. And then there was a bit of a financial problem with the company, and my position was made redundant. So basically, I was given a big wheelbarrow full of cash and told never to come back. And I thought, you know what? I'm in my 40s. I could look for another job in IT, or I could do this instead because it's much more fun. And that's what I've been doing ever since for about the past 11 years, helping other people transform their deepest fears into their greatest strengths, conquering fears and phobias. It's taken me literally around the world. I was out in the Far East for about 18 months, based in Indonesia, working in Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam. Been to Nepal, Tibet. We did some stuff in the USA, and now I'm firmly back home in the UK, 15 miles from where I grew up, but helping people through the power of Zoom and so on, literally around the planet, helping them to change their lives. So that's what I do in a nutshell. That's how I got here.
That's fantastic. And of course, the reason I was telling you earlier why I was interested in having you on the show, and you're saying, well, what does it have to do with bulimia, but I was speaking to you about the fact that there's a lot of fear with bulimics, and that their main fear being is letting go of bulimia and then gaining weight, or it becomes that security blanket, almost like Linus in the, in the Peanuts.
Yeah.
Like hard let go. So maybe you can give us some examples of some of the people you've helped out with fears. Even I know that you've helped people, you say, busting habits, even with bad eating. And I don't like to set people that are bulimics as bad eaters, because in general, when they're eating and they're not bulimics, they're very healthy eaters. It's just during their meals that they tend to not be. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, if we just don't call something a bad habit, just perhaps an unhelpful habit, or we help people to have more helpful, more empowering ways of living life and behaving, because I guess nothing's really good or bad except our view of it. But yeah, I mean, you do make a good point, and there would be a lot of fear there, and which I'm sure we'll explore a little bit more throughout this episode. But some of the fears that I've helped people to completely, and it is completely conquer, as in it's gone. It's not even, this is what I can do so that I'm able to face a thing. It's just the fear is no longer there. They don't even have to even think about it anymore. All the common ones like heights, spiders, flying. I just heard from a client who I'd had a few years ago. I just caught up with him last week. He'd had a fear of flying, a fear of heights for so long in his life that for the past 20 years, he was not able to fly anywhere, which caused him problems for the business, caused him problems with the family, because they couldn't just fly off to Europe for a holiday. They had to find alternative ways, which meant half the holiday was taken up with travel. We did a little bit of work about 3 or 4 years ago. Since then, he's flown 19 times, and he doesn't even think about it. So it's all the common ones. Speaking in front of audiences, standing up on stage and presenting in front of an audience is something that terrifies a lot of people. Helped quite a few people with that, and also some more esoteric ones, or less common ones. I had a lady who had a fear of vomit, not just a fear of her vomiting, but a fear of the thought of other people throwing up, which meant she couldn't even get on a plane, for example, because what if there's turbulence and somebody reaches for the sick bag and is sick? Even just the thought of that sent her into panic, which is bad enough under normal circumstances. For her, she lived in New Zealand. She's a performer. She's a dancer, very good dancer. And most of the offers for auditions were coming from overseas. And when you're in New Zealand, overseas is a very long way in any direction. Flying is pretty much the only viable option. I got a message from her a few weeks later. Hey, just thought I'd let you know I'm here in Los Angeles for an audition. It's like, whoa, there you go. I think the most unusual one was somebody who had a genuine, real phobia of yellow. The color yellow was enough to bring them out into a real panic. So you can have phobias of absolutely anything, and food-related phobias are not as uncommon as you might think. There are people who have a phobia about eating particular types of food. For some, it might be the texture, it might be the look, or the taste, or it might bring back some deeply unpleasant memories of horrible events which they associate with eating that thing. So of course, anytime they see that thing, it brings back all the emotion. But you can have a fear or a phobia of absolutely anything.
That's really interesting. And I'm sure that can be paralyzing to some people. Like you said, I mean, it's not just even flying. That's what fears can be.
Yeah, I mean, if you think, I mean, things like agoraphobia, fear of open spaces, that can cause people to be stuck in their own homes for not just for a few days at a time, but for years, afraid to even just step foot outside of the door. I mean, that can be incredibly debilitating. Then, of course, there's the opposite, claustrophobia, where people are scared if they're in enclosed spaces. Getting into a lift, not possible at all. And that can even things like flying, that's right out, because you're fine with the flying, but it's the claustrophobia, sitting in this small enclosed metal tube for hours on end. or getting on the bus. So, yeah, I mean, fears really can have a massive impact on someone's life, which is why it's so such a what's the word I'm looking for? Such a pleasure and an honor to be able to help somebody to just completely eliminate that phobia, so the thing is just no longer a problem for them, and they can, like that guy who got on 19 flights in the past few years, having been completely unable to even face the thought of flying.
That's why the claustrophobia. My mother has a certain level. If she can avoid it, she'll go up 20 flights of steps before taking an elevator. Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but she's pushed past her fears, but they never really went away. Unlike what you're saying is where you eradicate them pretty well. My mother just did what she did because she wanted, even with the fear, she would go ahead and do it anyway, but it was always there. So what sort of methods, I'm curious, what sort of methods do you use to help people to remove those fears?
Good question. And yes, you're right. I mean, some people, they do sort of, they still experience the fear, but they do the thing because the desire to do the thing is greater than the fear. It's like sometimes people will do something that's painful, physically painful, because the reward at the end of it is greater than the pain they're going through. Somebody running a marathon, most people running a marathon will tell you, no, I don't enjoy running the marathon itself, especially when you get to that point, you're breaking through this pain barrier for the 4th or 5th time, and you've still got 5 miles to go, and it's raining, and you're aching. It's like, why am I doing this? But you keep going because you want the result at the end of it, to have done the marathon. You go, yes, I've done it. And so some people can use that sort of approach to help them mitigate their phobia, so that at least they can find a way to get through it. But what I much prefer doing is just helping people to completely remove that fear in the first place, because if the fear isn't even there, then it's just like anything else that you're doing. And the way I do it, it's a combination of sometimes hypnosis, sometimes what's called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which, for those who haven't come across it, it's kind of like hypnosis in a way, but it's while you're still wide awake. It's all using language to communicate directly with the unconscious and to help it change its perceptions, change its decisions, and see new ways to behave. And what we do with phobias is, phobias are something we learn. Nobody's born scared of anything. You learn it, and you can either learn it through unpleasant experiences, significant emotional events where you experience something and it is so terrifying it kind of sears itself in the mind, or you could be taught it. The classic example of that is where a parent will drill into a child, don't talk to strangers, which is absolutely life-saving advice for the young child. But for some, it's kind of just stays there through the whole of their life. Because, hey, when was the last time anyone ever said to you, hey, you know what? You're big enough, you're old enough, you know how to look after yourself. It's okay to talk to strangers. Nobody tells us these things. So for some, that conditioning is still there. It's the same for so many things. Or we can learn by observing. So, for example, if you have a parent who's terrified of spiders, every time they see a spider, they freak out. You very quickly learn the association. That thing, we freak out whenever we see it. Got it. I see what we do. So you learn it by observation. So we learn phobias, which means we can learn new ways to behave. And that's the work that I do. It's all about finding out how you learned the phobia, and then giving the unconscious new ways to behave. We remove all the strong negative emotions that are associated with the thing. Because once there's no strong negative emotion there, you're in a much better place to be able to deal with it. And people sometimes say, "Oh, how can you remove the emotion? How does that work?" And it's a lot of it is down to a really interesting way in which memory works. Did you know when you remember something, you're not actually remembering that event? You're remembering the last time you remembered it. Because when you remember something, the act of remembering, the act of recalling a memory actually destroys that memory. But our mind creates a new memory. It would be like if you watched something on TV, the act of watching it destroys it, but you video it. So you've still got another copy, so you could watch it again. And you could keep doing that. But as you can imagine, you keep doing that, the quality is going to get slightly worse each time because you're videoing it each time. Plus, if you're videoing it, sat in your living room, watching the TV, you're videoing it, and somebody else is sat next to you and they're talking, some of that's going to get picked up. Or somebody walks past the TV, that's going to get picked up. So the memory kind of also has stored with it other stuff that was happening at the time, particularly emotions. So when you recall that memory of that event, that really scary event, but the emotional state that you're in at the moment is of just sheer laughter and joy, some of that gets mixed up with the memory. And the more you do this, the more you can remove the negative emotion that's associated with it, so that recalling that event is either flat or in some cases even it fills you with a bit of laughter. And that's part of the way in which we go about removing the thing that triggers the negative emotion. And then it's all about offering the unconscious other ways to behave instead of going, oh, that's a cup, freak out. He goes, oh, look, it's a cup. Yeah, that's nice. And you carry on with life. It's pretty cool stuff. It's quite fascinating. And it works so well. It's really cool.
That is really interesting. That whole thing about the videos is funny too, because there's they say that if you were a child and let's say your mother videotaped something that you did as a child and you continue, I don't know if this is true, but you continue to watch it from that age and onward into your adulthood, that you remember the emotions that you were feeling at that time, even if you were quite young. Is that true? Because it's repeated in your mind?
It's certainly possible. It's certainly possible, yes. And a key thing to remember is our unconscious, which is what drives most of what we do. Our unconscious mind works in sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, our senses basically, and emotion. Emotion is the primary way, is the way in which the unconscious works. All things emotional are from the unconscious. Logic is the way our conscious side of our mind works, and the conscious is the bit you're aware of. So when you're thinking and you're aware you're thinking, that's your conscience, your conscious mind that's thinking. Your unconscious is the bit that keeps everything going, keeps you alive, keeps you safe, and that operates in emotion. So that's why emotions play a really massive part in what we do. And memories can trigger emotions because recalling the memory releases the emotion that was associated with that memory. It's like, for example, sometimes you might smell the smell of freshly baked bread, and that brings you immediately flooding back to memories of your childhood, where maybe you're with your mum helping her bake the bread for the day. It's all interlinked. It really is fascinating stuff, and we're learning more and more about it as time goes by.
I imagine that there's one thing about the fears of, let's say, spiders or the color yellow or whatever, but the fear of letting go, I would think, would be a very difficult thing to help people with. Like I was saying about, Linus and his blanket, the peanuts. So like in a sense, bulimia, that is that to a bulimic. So their binging, purging is that blanket and letting go of it. There's a couple of fears of it, but of course one of the big one is I'm afraid I'm going to gain weight again if I let it go. But it's also something that becomes something that the food is comfort, and so you go to the comfort, and it's breaking that. It's what would somebody say? It's being comfortable in your discomfort.
Oh, that's a nice way of putting it. Yes. Be comfortable with your discomfort. Nice. And yeah, you're right. There will be, for many bulimics, there will be lots of underlying fears which are feeding into the whole problem. You're right. One of the fears would be, if I stop my bulimia, I'm just going to put on weight and I'm going to balloon and I'm going to be big and overweight, which is not necessarily true, as you will know. there are ways in which you can manage your eating, manage the way in which the portion size and what you eat and so on. You can absolutely keep it under control, but it can be a very powerful underlying fear for a lot of people. And for people with bulimia, that can be enough to keep them in that cycle, particularly if that fear of gaining weight is so strong that they then eat some food. I don't know, maybe eat that extra slice of cake just because they're out with friends and they're just having such a good time. You eat that extra slice of cake and then you get home and you go, oh my God, I should not have done that. I'm so stupid. I'm going to put on loads of weight. And you go through the bulimia cycle again. And on the other side, as you said, like with the whole Linus thing, it can be a comfort. How can bulimia be a comfort? It's crazy, right? But for some people, it can be a comfort because it feels like it's part of your identity. It's not, but it feels like it's part of who you are. And you know how to react. You know what's going to happen. And there is comfort in having a routine. No matter how unpleasant that routine may be, there is still comfort in having the routine, because it means it's familiar. You know what's going to happen. There's no unexpected surprises. If you get rid of the bulimia, for some people, it's like, oh, well, it's not going to change who I am because that's part of my identity. It's not really part of your identity as such. It's just a characteristic that you have. It's something that you do, but it doesn't change the underlying you-ness. If you get rid of the bulimia, it doesn't change who you are. It just changes the way in which you're interacting with food. But it doesn't change who you fundamentally are. You are still very much you. In fact, if anything, by removing bulimia, you get to be even more of who you are, because you are now more in control. The bulimia isn't in control. So if anything, it helps you to be more you than you have been. But it's sometimes hard to make that connection. And the other side of it is, well, if I get rid of the bulimia, I won't know what to do because it's a whole new situation. What if other stuff comes along? What if I have to deal with other things? Oh man, that is so scary. I'm just gonna carry on here, sitting here in my corner doing my bulimia because I know what to do. And that, for so many people, change is terrifying. And it's not the change itself that's terrifying. It's the thought of, well, once I change, I'm in a whole new landscape and I won't know what to do. What if it's worse there? What if I make mistakes? Hey, newsflash, you're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. That's how we learn. We learn by making mistakes. I do this. That didn't work. Okay. I now know that's not how we do that. What do we do next? But for so many people, it can be a really, really scary thing, which can cause us to stick with our destructive habits. And for some people, there can even be hidden benefits and hidden advantages to having any unhelpful behavior. I'll use smoking as an example because it's really easy to demonstrate. We know that smoking is harmful. We know any smoker will tell you, I know this is killing me. I know it's going to take years off my life. I know it. But for some reason, they find it really hard to quit. And it's not because of addiction to nicotine, because it's not that addictive. It's the habits and it's that underlying benefit. Now, what benefit could you possibly get from doing something that makes you cough your lungs up every morning? Oh yeah, coughing your lungs up isn't the benefit. But think about this. Particularly nowadays when you have to smoke outdoors. You can't smoke it in the office, in the workplace anymore. You have to go to particular smoking sections. It becomes very sociable there. You're hanging out with other people. And if it's work, there's no hierarchy at the smoking shelter. Everyone from the CEO to the cleaner is just Fred and Linus who are smoking and sharing each other's cigarettes and lighting and just having a chat. It's a great socializing thing. Nights out, if you're out clubbing or out at the pubs or whatever, often there's a smoking section. People will go there, they'll hang out. There's a term for it, smirting, smoking and flirting. It's a great way to connect with people without even realizing it. But it's because you've already got something in common. You're both smokers. You're both having to go to this place because you're not allowed to smoke in there. Already you've got something in common. Ice is already broken. It's brilliant. So when you quit smoking, you lose those. Or perhaps you're in a stressful job. You smoke, smoking doesn't relieve the stress. If anything, it makes it worse, because we know is that the chemicals build up and the toxins build up. It actually puts more stress on the body. But in that moment, you're really stressed. All right, push away from the desk, go out to the smoking shelter, smoke a cigarette, come back a few minutes later, you're feeling a bit less stressed. It's not the cigarette that's made you de-stress. What's happened is you've taken yourself out of the situation. But as far as your unconscious is concerned, when you get really stressed, hey, let's go and have a cigarette. So it's got that thing there. Well, I can't quit smoking because then I'm going to get so stressed and my head will explode. Once your unconscious is able to find other ways to behave, so, okay, I get stressed. You know what I'll do? I'll just push back for a moment, close my eyes and think for a moment. Or if that's not enough, I'll just go up to the water cooler and just get myself some water, or get myself a cup of tea or whatever. Just take myself out like I used to do with a cigarette. There are other ways I can do that, which aren't going to look like I'm just shirking and skiving. Once you get that, then the unconscious, oh, okay, yeah, we can still get the benefits. Hey, yeah, come on, we're not smoking anymore. It's done. I'm not a smoker anymore. Cool. Similar things would happen with bulimia. For some people, there will be hidden benefits that they get. And it's going to be different benefits for each person. But once you can identify what those hidden benefits are, it's like, okay, all this bulimia, it really sucks. It's horrible. But if there was a benefit in here, if somewhere in all this nonsense and mess, there was some positive benefit I'm getting, what might that be? And what are other ways in which I can get that benefit? Once you start down that path, the grip that bulimia has starts to lessen, because now it's not, I get this benefit through my bulimia. You now understand the positives that you're getting, and you find different ways, more helpful ways to get those positives, which makes it easier to let go of the bulimia. It no longer has such a big grip on you. Again, to return to smoking, it's just because it's such a great way of illustrating these things. I knew of a couple, they used to smoke. The husband came, got some hypnotherapy, became a non-smoker. The wife came a few weeks later, did the same. They were both non-smokers, fantastic. 3 or 4 months later, the husband says, do you know anyone who could do marriage counseling? Why, what's up? Ever since we stopped smoking, marriage has just gone to pot. This wasn't my clients, this was someone that I knew of who did this. So he said, okay, well, both come in and we'll have a chat about it, see what we can figure. Brought them in, and they realized what was going on. They'd been married for like 30 years. They would be doing their own stuff. One of them would sit down, light up a cigarette. The other one would stop what they were doing, sit down with them, have a cigarette, they'd have a bit of a chat, and then they'd go on and do their stuff. Subconsciously, smoking had become a signal for them to, right, let's stop what we're doing, we'll sit down, we'll have a wee bit catch up, chill, hang out together for 5 minutes, and then go back and do our stuff. No longer smoking, they weren't getting that time to just connect with each other. They were starting to drift apart because smoking had been the thing which had kept them together. Once they realized that, they were then able to go, right, you know what, we'll find other ways so that we make sure we take some time out and just be a couple together, everything back to normal. So it's finding what is the hidden benefit and what are other ways I can get it, which makes it easier to let go. And the fear of what is life going to be like when I get rid of this. One way to get through that is anticipate what life is going to be like, and then look at what's beyond that. So you then start getting excited, not about life beyond bulimia, but you start getting excited about life beyond whatever is beyond the bulimia, which means once you've conquered your bulimia and you're in this new scary situation, you're still excited because there's something beyond that. So it doesn't matter how scary things are now, there's something beyond it to look forward to. You've always got something to look forward to beyond what you're looking forward to, and that can often be enough to just help us move forward, because it makes whatever we're in now much more better. I was like, well, okay, yeah, I mean, this is a wee bit scary, but you know what? I'll get through this. And then I've got that to look forward to. Right, let's make this work. And it's just giving you that thing to look forward to beyond the thing you're looking forward to. So you don't have the fear of, right, well, I get there and then I've no idea what to do. I'll be stuck. It's right, I'll get there and then I'm going to do that, which can be enough to help, just help to bring you moving forward.
That's very well said. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate your time, Keith, very much so. And can you just let our listeners know where they can get a hold of you?
Sure. I'm all over the internet, all over the social media. Just look for Keith Blakemore-Noble. Or the easiest thing is just go to keithblakemorenoble.com. No spaces, no dashes, just keithblakemorenoble.com. Our website, you'll find the details there.
And are your books also available?
Media.
Do you have your books listed also on your website for them to take a look?
Yeah, books. All the books are on the website, and they're also available in places like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Waterstones, all these places. But yeah, check out the website, and that'll take you to all the other places. And I'm really lucky. I'm the only person on the planet with this name. So if you search this name, it's me. You're going to find, good or bad, it's me.
Yeah, unlike mine. Mine is very common. Lovely. Thanks again for being here today, Keith, and for sharing.
My absolute pleasure, Lorianne. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.